give them another couple minutes. Good morning, Justin. How are you? Can you guys hear me? Those of you that are online without picking up the microphone, or do I need to pick it up? Okay. I'll pick it. Which one am I picking up?
Either one, doesn't matter. I usually just keep two up here just in case somebody uses this one because this one has more battery. But I usually keep one up here just in case.
Okay.
Yeah, you can go ahead and sign in.
Okay.
Kind of who you are and what you do.
Wrangle cats. That's what I do.
Similar.
Not like that. Salespeople. You guys ready to start? Okay. Here we go. So for those of you that don't know me, good morning. My name is Jen Davis. I am currently the CEO of Holt Homes Group, so I run Dan's team. I am in charge of everything from basically there are three people that report to me. One is our director of operations, which is Monica Keltz. One of them is Ashton Gonzalez, who's the director of lead generation, and then one of them is Shanna Blummel, who is our director of sales. So we've got a team of 18 people. Last year we closed 538 units. Of those units, 7 people are in production on our team. So we have a high unit count per agent, which is a little bit different than how some people run big teams. But that's how we do it. So clearly, we make and receive a lot of offers, right? So that's going to be our topic today. What I can promise you is that I will let you out early. We're going to flip-flop the format. So the format today, instead of making the calls at the top of the hour, we're going to make them at the end of the class, and you guys are going to text me when it's done. So I'm going to give you all my cell phone number with the assumption that you will text me once you've made your calls and contacts that you're supposed to make. So we're going to jump in. At this point, everybody that is online, let me know if you cannot hear me. So I know, Justin, you were having a hard time earlier. Now that I've got the microphone, is that a little bit easier? Well, wait. Hi, Brian. How are you? Oh, I love that about you. Also, I like your mask. You're welcome.
Trying to get as much mileage as I can while it's still close to Christmas.
Christmas season. So what was the topic last week that you guys went over, and what were some ahas from that? Last session, sorry, Wednesday.
Find and show homes.
Yeah, today we're making receive offers. I hope that's what I'm doing. Did anybody have anything that they learned on Wednesday that you've implemented since Wednesday that you've been able to utilize? Nobody? Has anybody shown a house since Wednesday? Oh, how'd it go? It was fun? Tell me about it.
So I was with a young investor I actually went to high school with, and I was really nervous because I was like, oh gosh, I don't know if this kid's real. Like, he's 24, and I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. But we ended up going to 4 houses, and it was really fun. Like, I don't know, it was my first showing, so I just had the biggest blast in the world.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
So I'm just like super pumped today. I'm just like, that was so fun. Like, I want to take everyone to go to open houses now. I'm just like, it was so fun.
That's awesome. I'm so proud of you. So my history is that I was a buyer's agent for our team for a long time. So I think 6 of the 8 years I've been on the team, I was our lead buyer specialist. So I also loved showing houses. I'm one of the few people that really enjoy the buyer aspect of the business. Clearly, we know that we need to lead with listings, and the buy side can be a blast. It's typically, I say, the more fun side, right? It's a warm and fuzzy. People are excited to see you. You're not beating anybody up over price, so it's great. Okay, so when we talk about the offer process, so we're making and receiving offers. Let me get into this PowerPoint. Okay, so this is what you guys are going to text me later. So you're going to do your contacts, your note cards, You're gonna do some, we'll do some script practicing in here at the end if you want to. We can roll through some objection handlers. If there's something you guys are finding that you're having a hard time with, I can role play that with you. So today you're gonna also add the 10 new contacts to your database. You're gonna speak with 10 people. You're gonna write 10 notes and hopefully preview some houses. Okay. So the offer is kind of like the Super Bowl of the process with a buyer and agent, or with a buyer or a seller, right? If you're working with a buyer and you've shown them 3 or 4 houses, they're ready to make the offer, that's your next step, right? Up until this point, we've been lead generating for business. We've been driving the business. Now we're at the point where we're going to put all of those things together and hopefully put something under contract and get it to closing to make some money. That's the goal with real estate, right? That's what we're here for, is to make some money. So it also is, we want to make sure that when we look at making and receiving offers, that we do it in such a way that we're setting our buyers and our sellers up for a win, right? It should be a win-win. That's one of the main reasons that we're at KW, is to make sure that everybody is a winner at the end of the contract, or at the end of the closing. Everybody feels well taken care of. So this is the process of moving the buyer or seller forward. So we're going to talk about it in 2 different ways. We're going to talk about it how we make offers for buyers and how we receive offers for our sellers. So the offer process. You can see on the screen, buyer makes an offer, and then the seller can respond in one of 3 ways. They can counter the offer, which puts you into negotiations. They can accept the offer, which begins the contract to close process, or they can reject the offer. So the rejection of the offer, it's interesting dynamics right now, because right now we are in a predominantly seller's market. So what we're seeing is loads of offers are getting rejected and one offer is getting accepted because we're in multiple offer situations. We used to talk about, on the rejection of offer, of when there was more inventory available, that, okay, we don't want to write an offer that's going to get rejected because it kind of puts us in on the defense, right? We're in a space where, well, now what do we do? The offer was rejected, my buyers still want the house. How do we make a better offer? We're in a different market right now, but I'm still going to talk about that. Say you've got aged inventory. So aged inventory in our market would be anything more than 35 days on market. That would be considered aged inventory. So when you look at something on the market 35 or more days, that's the ability that you have to negotiate potentially a better price for your buyer, right? So if we've got buyers that want a deal, that's one way to find them one, is to find something that the market is saying, you've pushed the boundary too far. The price, the condition, something doesn't match, right? So what happens is you make that low ball offer and they say, nope, we're not going to take it. Now what? Now we're in this reactionary position with our buyers of saying, you still want the house, and we've offended them. So the rejection of offer because of a low offer is an agent responsibility. The reason it's an agent responsibility is we did not educate our buyers well enough for them to present a strong offer. If it's a property that's been on the market for a while, it doesn't mean we can't negotiate, but we still have to be respectful of the boundaries of the market so that we draw that counteroffer. So that's in a normal market, or a market right now of something that's been on that's sitting there, that's collecting days on market. There's this other facet now, though, because we're in multiple offers almost all the time. I mean, yesterday, I think Derek on our team put 2 listings live. I think one of them had more than 10 offers on it. The other one had 6 or 7, and it's insane right now. So the rejection of offer now is a little bit different for the buyer, right? They're getting rejected. They're missing out on multiple houses potentially before they secure one or put one under contract. So what do we do to prevent buyer fatigue? Is anybody seeing that? I mean, anybody that's currently working with buyers, do you have a buyer that is fighting this buyer fatigue? They're getting discouraged because they keep losing out on properties. Anybody? You did right now, not right now. What about you?
I think you have to set their expectations. Again, you got to set their expectations up front before you take them out to show homes. Let them know what the market's going to expect from the buyers. And then come in with your strongest offer and let them know, that you know what the market value is and how to write a good, strong offer.
So when are you setting those expectations with your buyer?
Well, preferably when you meet them for the first time for your buyer meeting, and also before you go out and look at homes is what I usually do.
I love that. So that's exactly the answer I was looking for. So what you want to do is you want to set expectations with buyer very clearly and concisely multiple times. So some people call it a buyer consult, some people call it a buyer meeting, some people call it a strategy session. Right now, we're leaning more heavily into the strategy session because right now we're in such a competitive market. It elevates the level of the meeting with a buyer right now, if that's how you refer to it, because we're going to strategize to make sure we get you the best possible house at the best possible price. Because what happens is, if I don't set the expectation with the buyer and I take Mindy out and Mindy and I go look at houses and I've not said, hey, things are selling at or above list price. They're selling really at 105% of list price and they're selling in hours. And Mindy doesn't know that. And Mindy's expectation is maybe she bought a house for the last time 7 years ago. And at that point, she was able to negotiate. She was able to get all of the terms that she wanted because we were more in a buyer's market. If I've not set the expectation with Mindy that she's got to come in with her best offer first and that we are in a predominantly seller's market, then the first time I say that to her when we're negotiating an offer, Mindy thinks I'm working for the seller. Mindy no longer values me as a fiduciary for her. She sees me as, oh gosh, I thought you were working for me. What's going on? Why are you telling me that I have to offer this? I was expecting to go in 10% under list price. She doesn't understand it. Well, what happens is I'm setting her up for failure because if the first time I introduce that what the market conditions are is at the time of making an offer, we're in an emotionally charged situation. And when I say that to her, it's like gas on a fire, right? She's already high here, right? She's found the house that she wants to make an offer, and now I'm telling her she can't make the offer she wants to make, and she's had no prep behind it. So the reason we start negotiations at the time of the strategy session, right? That's when we're setting our buyers up to win the offer. Same is going to go on the seller side that we'll talk about in a little bit. So in this market, the only other thing I would add to it, in a seller's market, if your buyer loves the house and you're showing them and they make an offer and their offer is not the one that's selected, potentially what I would do is leave that offer in a backup position until your buyer finds another house. The reason being, people are making very quick decisions. Buyers have remorse. They're moving so quickly, they're emotionally charged, they don't have you as their agent that's prepped them for what's going to happen. So then they get into the situation, they outbid someone, the inspection happens, they panic, and they want out. If you've got the backup offer in position, they can come back around to you. And as long as you've not found anything else, you've now won the offer for your buyer. It may just be 10 days delayed. So keep that in mind as a tool to use during this time. In a backup offer, if I make a backup offer on one of your properties, I'm the buyer's agent, I could at any time call you and say, hey, my buyer found another property, we're withdrawing the backup offer. Does that make sense? So I'm protecting the buyer on any side, yes.
Would you write the backup offer into the special stipulations of the contract to clarify that it is a backup offer?
Yep, after we were rejected, after the rejection comes back, then I would say to the listing agent, are you accepting backup offers? At which time they should say yes, because it puts them in a really good bargaining position for inspections.
Put a first right of refusal in there as well?
I don't. We just put it in a backup status because if we're the first backup in, that's the same as a first right of refusal.
Okay.
We're the first domino. So that falls apart, they come to me.
So the contract vehicle you would use for that is the backup rider.
Thanks, Brian.
You're welcome.
He's the brains.
And how does that work then? If automatically under contract the minute?
Yeah, you have to pull it. It would be, you could negotiate it up to that point on a backup offer. So say they came to Brian's the agent and he says, you know what, Jen, they would keep yours as a backup offer, but honestly, you're going to need to increase your earnest money. We need less closing costs, whatever else. We would have that negotiated. So yes, if one fell through, I would go into place and my inspection period would start then. Accurate?
Accurate, yeah. It's negotiated as a totally different offer. It can be more, it can be less. The terms don't have to be competitive to the offer that's accepted initially. It's just a different offer altogether with that rider.
We are one of the few people that put backup offers in, and I bet we've had 3 go under contract because our buyers still hadn't found something. It really works for those buyers that it's like their search criteria is so slim that you're like, I don't know that I can find you another house like this.
I had one that was the third backup offer, and we still Got it.
and you still got it.
Uh-huh.
hmm
Because the other two had rescinded and found something different.
And for a listing agent, when you've got a backup offer and a buyer's agent then comes in and writes a list of 35 things that they want during the inspection, as a listing agent, you're like, nope, we don't have to do this. We don't have to do this. We're gonna put, like, right, we're in a position of power then for the sellers. That's you being the fiduciary for your sellers. Putting in a backup offer is also being the fiduciary for your buyer. If you're the buyer's agent, you're getting them into the mix while you're trying to find something else. It doesn't mean we're not looking. We're still looking, but if something happens with this, it happens a fair amount that deals fall. I mean, 10% of the market, under contracts fall through. 10%. So how many did KW close last year?
Well, oh gosh, unit wise?
Yeah, you know,
Oh, I know we did over $1 billion, but I don't know the unit count.
let's say, well, we'll just use our team.
It was like
So-
5,000, I think.
I
was
think
the
so,
total.
too.
Yeah, right around 5,000.
So if you look at that number, then how many would have probably fallen through? 500? That's 500 opportunities that most buyers didn't have. And the seller, if they didn't know that they could accept a backup offer, went back on the market and potentially took less from their house than they would have had they had a backup offer in place. It's just a different conversation to have. It also sets you apart as the expert for your clients. Any question? Yes.
Well, no, but this is so good.
Okay, we can stay here. Good. So we're still getting out early, but
Oh, that's
this
right.
is filling in
This
about
is-
15 minutes of time.
This is so good though. So you had asked if we had any situation where there are buyers
Mhm.
and blah. Okay. So I did. I absolutely set them up for this is a really hot market. Things are moving quickly. They're just not the type of people that can move that quickly. So we've missed out. We've missed out. We've missed out. We went and looked at one the day before Christmas. Probably had something to do with, you're on a high for Christmas, whatever. We look at it and they're like, yes. And they were actually able to make a decision. We got it under contract. Super exciting until 4 days later, she's crying in front of me saying, I really don't even love the house. Like, I was just really excited. And so, yeah, so we backed out. So now I still have them. Now they're super reluctant to put an offer in because last time they had buyer's remorse. So they want to wait. So this is good
Yeah.
information. I was going to say, what do I do to help these
So
people?
this is
This is great information.
Here's
for
the
that.
thing. Buyers they do get fatigued. You've got one that they're the ones backing out. Some people in here have buyers that keep losing out, right? It's a real thing. What I know about buyers is the more houses you show them, the less faith they have in you as the expert. So that's why, we're showing 2 to 3 houses before somebody makes an offer. My question to you would be, do you think it's that they're actually reluctant, or do you think that we've missed the motivation with the buyers? Maybe the motivation's not there.
No. So no, the motivation is definitely there. There were several houses. I mean, it's definitely, they were getting to the point where they're disappointed because they would look at a house, they would really like it. They would call me the next day and I'd be like, yeah, well, that's under contract now. And so that happened multiple times before they saw the one on
They
Christmas
made the
Eve.
offer on.
Yep. And so then when they made I'm, yeah.
The
And
only-
they're excited that they didn't get it. They're not like now.
They're
wishing-
relieved.
They're relieved. Yeah. But they just seem much more reluctant to go forward now. And they're in temporary housing right now. They've moved from Chicago. They need somewhere.
Need to do something.
Um,
The only other suggestion I have with buyers on the ones that tend to have remorse are the ones that feel like they can't go back and look at it the second time, where they're like, the next day they're calling, they're like, hey, we want to go back. And you're like, sorry, it's gone. What if you did the second showing at the time of the first showing? So bear with me. So you show the house, they're giving you the signs of, we like this, we really like this. And you know that their personality is I got to sleep on it, right? There's the old adage of, if you sleep on it, you won't sleep in it, or whatever that thing is. But if you look at it and you said, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I completely understand that we've missed a few things because we've waited until the next day. Let's just look at it a second time now. And so you physically take your buyers and you've shown them the house and you turn off all the lights in the house. And then you lock the door and you go out to the car and everyone has a drink of water or coffee or something else. Well, hopefully they're in their own cars because, COVID, but they're not in your car. Everybody has a drink. You walk back in and you unlock the door and you treat it as a second showing right then. The break from the house to the car and back, they will see it as if it's a second showing. We do it all the time. It fast paces the steps of a buyer. So when they see it that second time, when you walk back in, you treat it as a second showing. So high I personalities, which are typically really, buyer's agents that we love to chat, we love to love people, we love to hold their babies and offer them snacks and all of the things that go along with it. The second showing is not the time for your personality. The second time is the personality of someone that's a little bit more reserved or somebody that's going to let somebody just go look. So you walk back in, you turn on the lights and you say, hey, Mindy, I'm gonna let you guys just look. This is a really important decision and I want you to get to see everything through a fresh set of eyes. So I'm gonna turn on the lights. I'm gonna stand here in the kitchen while you look through the house. I'm available for questions, but I really want you to look at the house. I want you to go back outside and walk around it. So you're giving them the minute to process it. They may still decide not to move forward with an offer, but if they decide to move forward with the offer, usually it avoids some of the remorse later because they felt like you listened to them. They felt like, okay, I got to see it a second time. I wasn't in this house for 15 minutes. Then I wrote an offer. Now I'm under contract and I don't actually remember what the master closet looks like, right? I mean, it's moving so fast right now. Sometimes people are like, oh my gosh, the floor is cracked. Dude, it was cracked when we came in the first time, right? But they're overwhelmed by, oh, it finally has white cabinets and has gray paint and it has all these things. And it's totally fine that there's a half-inch crack in the middle of the floor, no big deal. They don't see it until the second time they walk in when the emotions are out of it. Those people that are competing and losing or not even having the chance to compete, if you give them the ability to look back through it before you leave, it does help. It doesn't fix everything, but it does help. Any other questions before we move? Brian, you good?
I'm good.
So, representing the buyer, prepare to write the offer. So, here's what I'm going to tell you. We have a one sheet for offers on our team. What I mean by that is we have a Google document that someone's going to make an offer that we fill out, that we give to our admin to type up the offer. It's all the pertinent points of a contract. It's a checklist for preparing an offer. If you text me today that you made your calls, I will share the checklist that we use on our team. Fair? Okay? I will give you my cell phone number. Okay, my actual cell phone number. This is not the number that is like on our website or anything. This is my actual number. So if you also need something else, I'd be happy to answer it. 2252. I got that number in college and it's really worked out well for me. All 2s and 5s. I should have written down Dan's number. That would have been funnier. Okay, so you're gonna prepare to write the offer by having a checklist. The pertinent things are clearly legal names, right? Verify the spelling of the buyer's names. Happens to everybody. Once you make the mistake, you won't make it again. And you're gonna write the offer based on the conversation you're having with your clients. And then we're gonna present the offer to the listing agent. There's a lot happening on this slide that we're gonna talk about, okay? Because that's 3 fast bullet points that really doesn't cover what you're actually gonna do. You're gonna start the conversation with your clients during your strategy session about how we're gonna present an offer. We're going to talk to them about things like earnest money. We're gonna talk to them about things like a due diligence period, your inspection period. We're gonna talk to them about being competitive within the market. We're also going to talk to them about fair market value. It's a moving target right now. But we're going to talk to them and we're going to set ourselves apart as the expert. So when we get ready to make that offer, I'm not saying to my clients, hey, Brian, like, what are you thinking? Like, what do you want to make? I know you want to make an offer. Where do you think you want to start? No, I'm the expert. I'm saying, hey, Brian, I ran a CMA and everything in this subdivision has sold from 200,000 to 210,000 and there's not been one that's hit the market in the last 6 months. So I really think it's listed at 210 and they're probably going to get 215. I am saying that on the front side of it. I'm saying, here's the data, here's how I'm reading it, here's what I would do. Wouldn't you agree? And Brian's going to say, I don't really want to go above list price. My job is to get you the best deal possible. It's the best house at the best price. Sometimes that doesn't mean it's the cheapest. Sometimes it's securing the property. If you want this property, the difference in $5,000 over a 30-year note is not that big. The difference in you paying for temporary housing for the next 30 days as interest rates go up, pretty big deal, right? I'm the expert. I'm not talking him into anything, but I am educating him. What we know about buyers is the more educated that they are, the more confident they feel, the better decision they feel they made. So it alleviates some of the remorse later. It alleviates we overpaid for it. It alleviates, oh no, what did I do? It alleviates some of those things because they feel like they partnered with you instead of you selling them something. Make sense? Any questions around that? Nope. Okay, writing the offer. I shouldn't have to say this, but I do. Type it, don't handwrite it. It's not sloppy, we're not crossing things out, we're not striking through. You're a professional. You're getting paid at minimum hopefully 3% to represent the buyer. It should be perfect. It should be double checked, and it should be presented in a professional manner to the listing agent. What I mean by that is I'm not texting Mindy and saying, hey, because we're friends, hey, sending you an offer at 123 Main Street, let me know. No, I'm calling Mindy and saying, hey, Mindy, what's the activity level like on 123 Main Street? She's telling me, and I'm saying, outside of price, what else matters to your seller? Outside of price, what else matters to your seller? I'm not an idiot. I know what the price needs to be, right? I've pulled the comps. I know what fair market value is. What I'm getting from Mindy is what's important to her sellers. Now, caveat to that is, if I ask Mindy what's important to her sellers, I actually need to listen. So if Mindy says to me, they need a 60-day close, or they need a lease back for a week after closing, great, okay. Then I tell that to my clients and I have to explain why we're doing that. Because what I might do is I may give a full price offer to Mindy that gives a 60-day closing, that gives a 1-week lease back, and maybe we sweeten it by not making them pay for anything in the lease back. And somebody else comes in $5,000 over list price, but they give a 30-day closing because they didn't ask the question, I win it. I win it and I save my clients $5,000. That's being the fiduciary. That's saying, I'm gonna go above and beyond for my client. It is never in a text message to the listing agent. It is never, we email it and then we don't check in on it. I can't tell you the number of offers that have gone to Dan's junk mail. Like sometimes if you send it direct through DocuSign or Dotloop, it doesn't actually hit the inbox. Somebody calls the next day, they're furious. You didn't even present my offer. I see it's pending. I didn't hear anything back. What's going on? I didn't know there was an offer. Nobody called. When I say this to you, I teach loads of classes for MAPS, which is the coaching company through KW. I have taught 3 classes on this in the last 30 days, and I have one more coming up at Family Reunion. And it blows my mind the number of people that text me later and they're like, oh my gosh, you were right. I should call the listing agent. So I have to say these things because we get busy, and I've done it. I've made the mistake. I think that because people see that it's my name or Dan's name or I'm friends with Brian, that if I just send it in a text message or I just send it in an email because they like me or they like working with my team, or maybe they don't, I don't know, that they're going to respond to me or I'm going to get somehow a response or first in line. What I can't control is what happens in Brian's email. I can't control which team members are in there. I can't control if it's Brian's listing or Blake's listing. If I don't make the call, that's on me. That's a really hard call to make to your buyers of, I'm really sorry we missed out and our offer wasn't even presented. Went to junk mail. I mean, I probably wouldn't actually say that, but you know what I mean. Feel pretty bad about it though. Questions so far?
You were saying that before you're making the offer, you're doing your CMA. With the market being so quick right now, are you still actually taking the time to do the CMA after you see the house? Or are you kind of coming to the showing already knowing?
I'm coming to the showing already knowing, because we're also showing less houses now because of COVID requirements. So when I say we were normally showing 2 to 3 houses, we're really trying to get that to 1. We're providing all the information up front. We're getting them disclosures. If there's a video tour, we're getting that to them ahead of time. So I'm showing up, or an agent on our team is showing up with that information already in their pocket, especially if it's in a subdivision, like a clear-cut subdivision. You get into certain areas around, you know, center town or University Heights or some of those, I'd probably have to see the house and then still pull comps. There are some in there that are just a little bit different. But yes, we actually always pull it because there have been a handful of times where we've missed it. If we've just kind of been like, oh no, I've been in enough houses at 175. I know this is a 175. And then there's something quirky that's happened on the block that we don't know about that shows up in the appraisal, and it's kind of embarrassing. Just to be honest. Make mistakes all the time. Any other questions? Okay, so when we're getting the offer ready, all of that starts during the strategy session, right? We're prepping our buyers for it. We're prepping them for their pre-approved. We have their lender letter. We have all these things that are going to happen. We write the offer. We have a checklist. How do you get the checklist today that I use? Yes, I'm going to trust you that you're making all those calls. And then we're going to present the offer to a listing agent, and we're going to present it first verbally, and then we're going to send it in an email. If you want to text and confirm that they received it, that's the appropriate time for a text. The telling them that you're writing an offer that's not a text message. Now, there are some other things that we're going to get into when we present it to the listing agent, which is, does anybody need a break? Are you guys good? I don't know if I'm supposed to give breaks. Good, good, good. Okay. So before we move on to represent the seller, one other thing, when you're presenting a professional offer, typically there are a lot of people that will provide a cover letter, and the cover letter will basically bullet point it out. It can just be in the body of an email, and it will say, hey Brian, I just wanted to touch base with you after our phone call. Attached is the offer. Buyers are pre-approved with Aaron Jernigan at Oak Star. They're putting 20% down. It's a conventional loan. We're offering $215 on a 210, and we moved our due diligence period to 5 days instead of 10, right? There are all kinds of things that you can do in your offer to make your offer better than somebody else's. But I'm putting it in the body of the email so that for Brian, it's a quick read. He knows what to expect. I'm not hiding anything from him. We also asked for a fridge. I'm not trying to sneak one past him. I'm trying to make it easy for him. Listing agents want to work with agents that make it easy for them. They want to work with someone that's not trying to out-negotiate them. They want the win-win. They want the win for their sellers. I hope they want the win for my buyers, and we're all moving on together. Sometimes people will do what we call a love letter, and you have to be very careful with fair housing guidelines. A love letter is something like, say I'm buying a house. I might write a letter to, and Mindy's my agent, I might write a letter and Mindy presents it to Brian, the listing agent. And the letter may be a picture of myself and my 2 kids. And I may say, I'm a single mom. This is my school district that I want to be in. I can see raising my family here, blah, 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 right? I get to tell them whatever I want to about myself. Mindy then, as my agent, is going to say to Brian, hey, my buyer wrote this. I'd love to send it to you. If you think your sellers would appreciate it, would love to have them see it. That's a love letter. I am trying to set myself apart. I'm probably including a picture of my kids because they're better looking than I am, and trying to win them over by, oh, look at these 2 little kids. I'd love for them to have this house, right? It's an extra step in what you can do to set your offer apart from potentially the 7 other offers that are in there. Okay, so now we're going to switch to represent the sellers. So now we're the listing agent, right? We receive the offer, we gather information about the buyer, and then we have a checklist for reviewing an offer. What that looks like on our team is we highlight it. We highlight all the pertinent things. So the things we fill in on the buy side are the things on the listing side when we receive the offer that we're highlighting, right? That's how you don't miss refrigerators or washers and dryers or closing costs. Once you miss that, you'll never miss it again. Nobody in here has ever made that mistake. I have bought a lot of refrigerators in my life. So what happens is we receive the offer, and what they mean by gathering information about the buyer is, do we have the pre-approval letter? Not only do we have it, does the pre-approval letter, number one, is it timely? Was it written a month ago, or was it written a day ago? I would ask if it was a month ago. Things change, people's employment changes, right? Is it timely? Is it a lender you know? And does it match the financing terms? I can't tell you how many pre-approval letters we have gotten that someone's pre-approved for a government loan and they have marked a conventional loan on the contract. That's weird. In a multiple offer situation, would someone write a stronger financing thing in the contract that the pre-approval letter doesn't match? You've got to, as a fiduciary for the seller, look at those details because the seller's not going to. So we're going to verify the information about the buyers. If I know the lender, I might call the lender and say it's Casey Cooper. Hey Casey, it's Jen. I just wanted to double check. I got this pre-approval letter from Brian. Mindy Whitty's the buyer. You know, anything else you can tell me about her? Anything I don't, you know, are there any corners I can look around? Anything I can see that I don't, you know, anything I don't know that you could tell me about? Casey has probably one of two answers for me. Oh my gosh, she's great, Jen. Don't worry about it. Or, you know, it's just preliminary. We've really not run hard numbers. We've really just kind of plugged in a handful of things. We'll get farther into it once we have the contract. Not a terrible thing, but if I have 6 offers and one of the lenders I call and I ask and they say, oh yeah, no, I know Brian. He banks with us. He does all this stuff. I've done multiple loan deals with him. I'm not at all worried. He's a solid buyer. That's different than we just started the process, okay? So as a listing agent, you are double checking the information that's in the offer. It's your responsibility to your sellers.
Jen, what do you look for cash offers
So I
in
want
that
proof
same
of funds.
scenario?
And it's not a screenshot of like, hey, this is my bank account with half of it X'd out and like, you know, whatever, here's my cash. I want a statement from the financial institution. I want a statement that says, Jen Davis has the funds in our bank that cover the purchase of 1744 East Buena Vista, whatever that is. Like, I want something that actually has letterhead and somebody's signature. Because I mean, if I just text you like my bank account with all the X's through it and all the things and, right? I also probably with cash would not want some non-refundable earnest money. Like, are they really cash or are they gonna later come back to me and say, really, it's a home equity line of credit, right? It's not really cash, it's like soft cash, right? Still have to have an appraisal on the initial house. There's still qualifiers that are in there. So if it's a cash offer, I'm looking for the letter from the financial institute. I'm looking that it's actual cash, probably with some non-refundable earnest money. And I'm looking at, did they check the box on the appraisal? What are they doing with that? Doesn't mean they can't have one, but I'm always kind of curious about it. I'm like, if you're basing it on an appraisal, it kind of takes the power of the cash away. So, or can we negotiate something around the appraisal of if it appraises, you know, if they go well over list price, where the bottom would be list price type thing. Any other questions? Do we want to do some script practice for presenting offers? Yes.
I'm assuming they put the listing agent puts other documents on the listing on the MLS. Do you typically download those and fill them all out if they are part of the listing and send them with the offer, just to save some time and make it more presentable?
Yes, like disclosures or
Whatever,
CCRs
yeah.
that they saw them and initialed them and all that. Yep.
Okay.
If it's attached, we present it with the initial offer. We have everybody initial it so there's no confusion later.
Gotcha.
So let's do a script practice. Let's talk about, I'm presenting an offer. Let's say I've got a listing that's been on the market for 35 days. And so I've got the aged inventory and somebody brings me an offer at $25,000 under list price. How do you present that to the seller? It's 25,000 under. What would you say? Anybody?
Who wants to give it a shot? I'll pick somebody if you guys don't.
Otherwise, I'll do it. It's fine.
I think I'd give them a call and say, hey, we're getting ready to send over an offer. It's $25,000 in their list price. Here's the reason why we're doing this. And we are willing to negotiate if reasonable, but this is what we're looking at. So just give us your best response.
Okay. What if you're now fast forward, now you're the listing agent. Say the buyer's agent, I send you an offer for $25,000 under. How do you talk to your sellers about it?
We've received a offer for $25,000 under list price. We're going to take a look at it, see if it makes sense, because it's not always the price that is important. If it doesn't work out, we can either send what's the word?
Counter offer.
Counter offer. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Or we can just reject it. It's nothing set in stone right now.
I like that. It's direct, it's to the point. Anybody else have anything different that they would say? Yes.
First thing I like to do, and I've had this once so far, is to set the stage a little bit and just kind of put them at ease and say, hey, listen, we got an offer. Always remember that an offer is better than no offer. And then go into the details of it and go from there. But just kind of set the stage a little bit.
Yeah, I'm always like, hey, don't shoot the messenger. I've got good news and I've got bad news. Like, but that's my personality. You also have to match these scripts with what your personality is. Mine is very much like, hey, good news, bad news. Because typically I'm like, hey. I mean, that's a lot what it sounds like. I know you've been worried because we haven't gotten an offer yet. Good news, we got one. Bad news, you're not going to like it. And before I go into the terms with you, what we're going to talk about is that no matter what, we're going to send a counteroffer. The ball is never going to drop in my court. I will always give a counteroffer, even if it's $1,000 under list price, right? So I'm always going to give a counteroffer. There's never going to be something that I don't counter unless I have a multiple offers. So what I would say is I would go through the other terms first. I always save the worst for last because that's my personality and I really don't like to disappoint people. So I typically am like, so good news, they want to close in 30 days. It's a conventional loan. They're putting 10% down. They want to close at wherever. Are you comfortable with all those things? Awesome. Okay, well, they're also waiving an appraisal. Really? Yeah, because they've come in pretty significantly under where we're at. Now, we both know that we've been concerned about not getting an offer and we've talked about doing a price improvement and we've not quite done that yet. So let's talk first about what you would feel comfortable dropping the price to. If this doesn't work out, what are you comfortable with? So say they're at 200,000, they're like, gosh, I'd be okay at 190. I'm like, sweet. That's now not a $25,000 apart. We're only 15 apart, right? Positive thinking, it's fine. So then I present the terms and I'm like, okay, well, now that we're talking about it, they actually came in at 175 on this 200. Clearly that's under market value. Clearly it's not something that we're willing to accept. And I think we can give them a great counter. If you were willing to improve your price today to 190, could we give them that counter offer? Is that something you'd be comfortable with? And if they say, that's it though, like I can't go down anymore, then I'd say, okay, well, maybe let's back that off to like 192. So we have a little bit more room so we can come back one more time. Based on what their threshold is, then I am negotiating from there, right? So all it is keeping the conversation going. I've had negotiations take as long as 6 weeks. Typically those are on luxury properties where it takes a little bit longer. People get mad, they walk away, everybody has an ego. The thing about this is we don't. We do, but we don't in these situations. So what I look at is, if you talk about language patterns or sales patterns or language of sales patterns, sorry. If we're talking about that, the thing I'm not going to do is I'm not going to call Brian my buyer, mine. Brian is the buyer. Brian and his wife are the buyers. They are not my buyers. If I'm talking to the listing agent and I'm presenting a low offer, I am the professional. I am not emotionally tied to it. I am making sure that they understand that I represent the contract, I represent the buyers, but that I am a professional and we're going to see it all the way through. When you start having my sellers and my buyers and all this, agents are involved, agents' emotions are involved, and we don't get paid to have our emotions involved. It's okay to get irritated sometimes. It's okay to feel for somebody. It's okay to be empathetic. It's not okay though, if we're really after a win-win solution, it's not okay to pit one side versus the other. At the end of the day, the closings that happen are buyers that want to buy and sellers that want to sell, and agents that just don't get in the way of that. Fair? Yes. Depends on the agent.
So the question was, do you negotiate verbally?
Yeah, and I would say depends on the agent. If it is somebody that I am comfortable with, that I have a good rapport with, I would in this market though, understanding that multiple other offers may come in, I would tie it up pretty quickly. So there would probably be a handful of agents that I would feel really comfortable doing that with, all of them at our company. Yes, you, Brian, I would do that with. All of them
Yay.
here though, like I have a relationship with them, they would not. But I've been on the other side of that. I've been there where you're verbally, everything's good, and something $10,000 over list price comes in, and you're like, oh, I still have to present it. Just be cautious and still wrap it up as quickly as possible. So yes, I would. Don't do it for very long though. Is that a fair answer?
Yeah.
Blake,
It really is style. Yeah.
Blake does a lot of verbal back and
Yeah.
forth.
If you don't have time, just get it written up really fast. That's the biggest thing. But I'll call them and say, hey, this is what it's going to be here in it'll be here in 2 hours. I'm waiting on them to sign. This is what's coming in. Is that going to work for your sellers? And if they say, like I will go back and say, hey guys, we've already submitted the offer, but let's start working on a counter. We don't know what it's going to be, but let's just be prepared if it does.
Yep.
Because it's as fast as I can get it in writing.
And I would say in this, when someone tells you that there's multiple offers, when a listing agent, if you call and you say, hey, Jen, do you have any offers in on this? And I say yes, don't expect I'm going to give you a counter offer. I'm going to assume if I've told you that I have multiple offers in, your first offer is your best offer. Fair?
I'm typically written initial and then verbal for responses is my general style. And that's kind of, I think I heard it said once as the cookie analogy, right? If like I brought a tray of cookies around and offered it and not many people you would take it, you'd be polite. But if it was in your box lunch, how many would eat the cookie?
Everyone.
Everyone. So
I
yeah.
would eat the
So
cookie
seller.
that's out
So
there,
yeah.
too.
So yeah. Sometimes
Why?
sometimes
I'm
they're
licking doorknobs. It's fine.
sometimes the clients are more likely to accept something that is a little less ideal if it's right in front of them than versus verbally. So it
Yep.
depends.
I think so too. Also, these sellers have fatigue, right? They've been out of their house all day. They want to get their dogs out of their car and their kids back home and into a bath and into bed and all this stuff. And they also sometimes just want it to be done. So sometimes the person that gets it there first with the cleanest amount wins because the sellers are like, I don't want to do this again tomorrow. I don't want any more showings. Does anybody that is online watching, if you guys have questions, just put them in the chat. I don't see anything yet. Yes. He's getting his steps in.
So if you reach out to a listing agent and they say that they have multiple offers, if you're the buyer's agent and you don't believe that they have multiple offers, what do you do then?
Or if your buyer doesn't believe that they have multiple offers.
I would do that on an escalation clause. I don't know that I would do that blanketly. I can't think of a time that I have not believed somebody that there were multiple offers. I also am really trusting of people. I guess if I didn't believe it, I would say I have had agents recently send me spreadsheets of like what the offers are that are in. Like, here's what we've got. Their names blacked out. They're not agents blacked out. And they're like, here's what we've got. We're telling everybody. They're not just sending it to me. They're sending it to every agent that's done it. I guess I would potentially just say, how many offers? Can you give me the name of the other agent? I don't know. I mean, I've never had that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know that a seller or a seller's agent is required to give other information. On an escalation clause, you can ask for it because your escalation clause is going to beat something. So there has to be proof of the next highest offer.
I have done that with a buyer where we do an escalation clause just so that you can remove their worry, but it's kind of a one-off.
Interesting situation.
So I recently had 2 offers come in on the same day on a property that had been listed for a long time. And so one of them came in as a lowball. And I let them know I've got another offer coming in. They apparently didn't believe me because they didn't change it, right? And they said, well, let us know what we need to do to beat it. The other offer came in. My sellers liked it. They said, accept it. We accepted it. The other side came back and they wanted proof that it was presented and wasn't accepted. And the sellers are like brother and sister. They live in Arkansas. They're 80 and 85. There's no e-signatures going on here. And I'm not going to ask them to drive 3 hours to come sign a contract that you're not accepting so that I can prove I've accepted it. It went back and forth for a couple days. And finally the brokers said we could just do an email, but that was just odd.
It is odd. I mean, technically speaking, it should say rejected. I mean, there's a box for the initials on the contract for it to be accepted. So if they drove 3 hours to sign the one they were going to sign, or you drove or met halfway.
It was the day that our printing was
not working. We were unable to print that day. That was awesome.
But I think at that point, if I knew that I had another offer, I probably, because I've been in it so long and I've had those things happen, I would have brought both offers with me and said, hey, we're signing this one and we're rejecting this one. Because they had to sign the accepted one. I would have also gotten them to reject the initialed one at the same time. I think on the ones where you're like, I don't believe you.
The accepted one?
Mhm.
I absolutely would normally have printed them off and done so, but I literally came here, which is where we were meeting, and all of our.
Am I not going to want to hear what you're going to say next? Did you sign for the sellers?
Oh, no, no, no,
Oh.
no, 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 gosh, no, no. All the technology was down. So I was representing the other buyers.
Okay.
I was representing the other buyers, and so I hand wrote, which you don't want to hear that either, but I did hand write the contract and we hand signed it.
Oh, I'm fine with that in that
Yeah,
circumstance.
But
I'm
we,
fine
we,
with it.
but we did do that, and so that then I wasn't able to print the other one. I just didn't think it was going to be a big deal.
Right.
Lesson learned.
The only option on that is I think DocuSign and Dotloop, depending on which one you're utilizing, they have it that you can host an in-person signing. So you can have it on your phone and you can have them click your phone and sign it. It just would be a thing that you didn't know. It normally is not going to be a big deal until it is. And then you're like, an email potentially will suffice. So you just, on the multiple offers where you're like, I don't believe it, I don't think that you can require the listing agent to prove it. I think you just have to say to your buyer, we've got to make the best offer that you feel comfortable and confident in. If you don't want to compete or you're concerned about competing, we're never going to push you where you don't want to go. So if the house is listed at 210 and you don't want to offer, you don't want to go to 215, but you're comfortable at 210 and you'd be happy to buy it at 210, let's go ahead and make that offer. We don't know what else is out there, but if you feel comfortable with 210, let's write up that offer, and then the chips will fall where they may. And if they pick another offer, well, then you can be like, I told you they had multiple offers. So, did you have a question back there? Oh, thanks.
Eric?
Can you explain an escalation clause? Yes.
Oh, good.
Great question. So an escalation clause is if there are multiple offers in, you can write something, and I should have written one down ahead of coming in, but you could say, I'm representing Brian, Brian's the buyer, and all parties agree that buyer will increase offer $1,000 over any other offer received by seller up to 220.
Any other written offer?
Any other written offer
Is what
up
I
to
put it.
220. So basically what we're saying is we're again listed at 210. We'll go up to 220. That's our cap. We're putting a cap on it. And then with written offer, if our offer is selected, seller will provide the written offer that was the closest in negotiations. I could clean that up and post it later. We could put it on an internal page so you had the writing, because it's kind of hard to come up with. But it's basically, we'll go up to this, and then if we do that and we win, you have to actually show me that you had one at 219. We'll take you at
Like,
220.
oh yeah, I got one.
Oh, actually, yeah.
JK, LOL, whatever.
But that is
know.
risky,
Daughter.
because I can tell you as a listing agent, if I get that, you can bet that I'm going to call everybody that hit that lockbox and do my darndest to get the maximum limit offer sent,
Sure you
even
are.
if the terms are awful.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
I had that happen on a listing that's under contract right now. It was an escalation clause up to 195. They were cash, no inspection, but the offer that escalated them up to 195 required all those things, but they still contractually had to go up to 195
Because it was on the price.
because it was on price only.
And as a buyer's agent, potentially you could go one step further and say with comparable terms. I mean, you can contract around anything. We just have to come up with the language for you for
Be
it.
specific to what your buyer is actually wanting.
We're starting to see people start waiving inspections and those types of things just to get the deal on the house. And you just, guys, at the end of the day, you have to do what is best for your clients. And you have to understand that some of those you're going to win and some you're going to lose, but you're here for the long haul, right? So we're always going to do the right thing. If we're going to do what we say we're going to do, when we say we're going to do it. And if it doesn't work out and our buyer doesn't get it, we can find them another house, but we're not going to talk them into something that later we don't feel good about. So, okay. Okay, customer experience. So we referenced this earlier. This is basically what every KW agent learns when they come in. Win-win or no deal, integrity, do the right thing, customers always come first, right? That's everybody's customers. That's not just mine. So like, my clients can't win at the expense of your clients. I've got to make sure that it is a win-win or no deal. Commitment in all things, communication, we're going to seek first understand, so we're going to ask questions. If you're having a tough time negotiating with them or you're having a tough time communicating with them, we're going to come at it in a very kind and caring way of, hey, what's going on? This isn't like you. This seems unusual for you to be acting like this. Is there something else going on that I could help you with? Creativity, ideas before results, teamwork, trust, and success. So we're jumping into the customers are always right. It's basically, so Mo Anderson is clearly the cultural icon of Keller Williams. It's not only that we're making commitments, but that we're also keeping them. It's what I said in a different format. Do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. So if I go to Brian and I say, outside of price, what else matters to your seller? And Brian says, actually, you know what, Jen, they really just, this is actually, I know you said no price, but they want this price, but it's as is. We're at the bottom of the barrel. We've been on the market for 35 days. We're willing to take this. We want to do this, blah, 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 blah. It's as is. And if I say, okay, and my client says, okay, and we sign it that it is as is, that's a commitment. It does not waive inspections for your clients. Your clients can still have the inspections, but they're doing that for knowledge, not for negotiation. So if I make a commitment to Brian and Brian's clients, and my clients have said, we're going to purchase this as is, or we're going to lease it back to you for a week afterwards at no additional cost to win the multiple offer, that's a commitment. And it can't be we get into the inspections and people panic and then we pull back and we don't want to do it anymore. And we're like, well, I mean, we still have the right to inspect. I know we said it was as is, and I know we wrote it in the contract. There's always a way out of a contract, guys. I know that. I know there are loopholes. I know I can't force anybody to buy. I know I can't force anybody to sell. But as an agent with integrity, if you guys make a commitment, you need to make sure that the clients understand what that commitment is. Because what happens is our market is moving really quickly, and we're in it for the long haul. But the things that we do today are going to set us up for future success. So if I promise you that we're buying it as is, don't worry about it, we've got this, blah, 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 and then I come back and I'm like, yeah, no, they saw the inspection report, they really don't want to do it anymore. Don't we think that Mindy in another multiple offer scenario?
Escalation clause?
Oh, hey, thanks.
Somebody was watching.
How am I doing?
That's okay.
Not my best. Not my best.
My favorite thing I heard you say was, other than price, what other things are important?
Mhm.
That's a great way to make the other person drop their guard.
Hey, thanks.
I like the way you said respect the boundaries of the market.
Respect the boundaries of the market.
That's huge.
So that's one I use a lot.
Here.
Oh, yeah. That's one I use a lot. And the bottom part is agent is required to show proof of another offer before this buyer will accept terms. So on that one, and I took this from somebody else too. On the other questions, everybody was asking about, how do you know that that there is another offer in? Most of our agents are trustworthy, good people. So I still have this on, don't I? So I always trust unless there's a reason not to, but also sometimes a buyer will not do an offer if they're told that there's another one in. So as an agent, I'm not going to lie and say, hey, there's another offer in, because what if that person says, I don't want to be in a bidding war? I've seen that happen too. Yeah. So anyway, that's the wording I had. So
Thank you.
me and Mickey will go back.
So we'll just leave that up there for those of you in the back that can come up and take a picture later.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. Any other questions? Do we need a break? Want to do a quick break?
For about 11.
Let's do a 10-minute break.
So it is
It is 10:58. We'll
Yeah.
start back at 11:08.
11:08.
I've never had it
Yes.
happen. The one time that I didn't have it. That's fairly common then?
It used to be a bigger deal when not everything was electronic. Like it was, I can remember always having to get it signed. But yeah, we've had people years later come What's that noise? Sorry, kids. Good. Okay, we're back.
Eric, can you hear us?
Danielle, are you there?
Eric, Justin, Mike Brown.
So Danielle, for those of you that have met her, there she is. She is one of my very best friends. We worked together at Bass Pro Shops 1,000,001 years ago. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You don't look a day over 500,000.
Thanks. She got mad at me. So she's not here, so she can't defend herself. She got mad at me because I would cut past her desk every day and I created too much distraction. Shocking, I know, that I would be loud or obnoxious or annoying walking past someone's desk. But then I won her over. Now we're very good friends. Okay, so there are a couple of questions before we jumped back in that I'll go through. Do you want to, we were talking about contacts. So there was a question really about lead generation on the buy side. How many contacts, where did I find them? Is that correct? So when I was running as a full-time lead buyer specialist, there were a handful of lead sources that we use. So I taught a class in the MREA business planning, and that was what it was about, was lead sources and where you get it. So typically, most people will have 2 to 3 go-to lead sources. It's where you're in your wheelhouse, right? For some people, it's door knocking. For some people, it's open houses. For some people, it's prospecting, actually dialing, whatever that looks like for you. You figure out what it is you're willing to do, and that's typically your lead source. So for me, I don't particularly want to call for sell by owners, so that's probably not my lead source. Now, there are people on my team that's their lead source and they love it. So you have to figure out what it is you're willing to do, because a lead generation plan that actually doesn't involve something you're willing to do is really no plan at all. So for buyers, the easiest source would be open houses, but doing an open house in a great way. So what I mean by an open house in a great way is if we're doing an open house, we are going to door knock the subdivision a couple of days ahead of time. We are going to circle prospect the subdivision. And what that sounds like is I'm going to get a call list and I'm going to call around the area and I'm going to say, hey, this is Jen Davis with Holt Homes Group. I just wanted to invite you to our open house at 123 Main Street. Your neighborhood is amazing and the houses are selling so quickly. I just wanted you to have first dibs on picking your neighbor. And they say, oh, that's really nice. Thank you for inviting me. Absolutely. Would love to have you come by if you're curious about what's happening in your market, right? So I'm inviting them to, number one, bring a buyer. I'm also saying, if you're curious about what's going on in your market, you're welcome to come. You get a lot of neighbors in that way. It's okay. It's your opportunity for a listing appointment. So we're going to circle prospect it, and then we're going to go to the open house with an intention of something. So the intention of something is a lead, right? That's what we want. We want a lead. We want a name. We want a phone number. We want an email address and a physical address, right? Those are the 4 pieces of information that we need for it to qualify as a lead. So open houses. That is the easiest startup source of business for buyers. The second option is listings. We lead with listings and I'm a buyer's agent. Oh, what does that mean? I have to have signs in the ground, whether I'm on a team or whether I'm an individual. If I want buyer leads, the fastest way to buyer leads is to have inventory. Our inventory are listings. So if I have nothing to sell, I need to find something to sell to bring buyers to me. So every goal with a listing is twofold. We're going to put a sign in the yard to get a buyer, and we're clearly going to sell the house because we have the listing, right? Sometimes it's 3 if that seller also becomes a buyer. So the 2 fastest sources are going to be open houses and listings. In order to get listings, then that's where you have to decide, what am I willing to do? Am I calling expireds? Am I calling for sell by owners? Am I calling neighborhoods for buyers? So if I know that Mindy wants to live in Spring Creek, I'm going to get a subdivision list for Spring Creek and I'm going to call and say, hey, this is Jen Davis with Holt Homes Group. Do you know if any of your neighbors are getting ready to sell? I've got this buyer that really wants to live there. I can't find anything for her. Have you ever thought about, do you know if any of your neighbors are getting ready to list their house? Ask about the neighbor first. They say, oh no. Have you ever thought about selling? Answer is yes or no, no big deal. If they say no, oh gosh, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate you answering my call today. Would I be able to repay you by sending you a market update? I'd love to email you a free CMA so you know what your home's worth. Clearly you've picked a home in a great area and I want you to know what equity position you're in. Sure. Now guess what? I had their name, I had their physical address, and I had their phone number. I just got the email. It's a met. Any other things that you would add?
No, that's perfect. Jessica did ask online, where do you get the call list?
So there are a couple of ways to do it. We typically use a source. There are different ones. Land Voice is one, Cole Realty is one. You can, if you're a member of a subdivision, if you live in Spring Creek, you could get the directory for Spring Creek, right? If I'm listing a house in Spring Creek and I want to farm it and Mindy lives in Spring Creek, I would say, hey, Mindy, by the way, a lot of times neighbors know who wants to move into the neighborhood. Do you happen to have the neighborhood list for Spring Creek? I know you're really involved in the pool. I know you have all these things. Do you happen to have that list? Awesome. Would you care to give it to me so that I could let your neighbors know that we're getting ready to put your house on the market so that we could potentially pre-sell it for you? Why would she care?
Yeah.
Guess what? How many houses does Spring Creek have? 400?
400?
I just added 400 people to my database. Not hard. I mean, it's hard, it's tedious to input it, but it's there. So those are the types of things where you're like, this is what you have to do, what you have to be willing to do, because the market is not what it used to be. There are not as many expired. There are not as many for sale by owners that are not having, there are loads of for sale by owners, but they're having success. So they're not as willing to list with agents. Anybody else? You had a question before we came back online.
What are some things or questions you ask a listing agent when you're preparing an offer or get ready to send an offer to kind of probe some information from them without sounding, turning them off or sounding too needy or anything
Yeah.
like that?
I'm really pleasant to work with. Like, I try to be. I don't know that everyone thinks that, but I try to be pleasant. It's a goal. Every day I wake up and I'm like, maybe I'll be better today. Maybe more people will like me. I'm not sure. So I typically go into it and I'm like, honestly, Brian's the easiest example because he's sitting here. If I call Brian and I'm like, hey, Brian, it's Jen. How are you?
Hey, Jen.
What are you up to?
Oh, just, getting all kinds of calls on this new listing. You know how it is.
Oh, so you know why I'm calling. I'm interested in 123 Main
I
Street.
hope that's why you're calling, yeah.
Yeah, what you got going on there, buddy?
Oh, we've had a lot of activity. 10 showings in the first 24 hours, and I do have a couple offers coming in.
Awesome. Do you have a time limit for when you're going to stop accepting offers?
The earliest cutoff from the ones that I've received is 5 p.m. tomorrow.
Okay, and are you going to honor that cutoff or are you going to ask them to extend?
I will honor that. as it
Awesome.
stands.
So if I have an offer into you no later than 4 p.m. tomorrow, you would have a chance to present it, or are you presenting offers earlier than that?
I will most likely be presenting at noon. That's when the sellers are able to look at everything.
Awesome. So I would really need to have the offer to you by tomorrow at 11.
That would be amazing.
Awesome. Okay, well, I'm going to show it today at 4 o'clock, and I am going to give you, I've already set up with your sellers. I'm going to give you an update when I leave. Is that okay?
Perfect.
Do you prefer call or text?
Text.
Awesome. So I will text you when I leave and let you know what's going on.
Awesome.
Anything else you can tell me about the sellers? Do you know where they're going? Do they need some extra time? What's going on?
So they do have to buy. So really some additional time for them to find a house would be great. We are intending on countering with a reverse contingency to allow them 2 weeks to find a home.
Awesome. So, okay. So I've got cash buyers, honestly, Brian. So they don't have anything to sell. So if they like the house, honestly, I don't know that, I don't think that's a big deal for them. We can do an extended closing or a reverse contingency. Is it easier for you if I just write it up as a reverse contingency?
Yeah, that would definitely be easier.
Fantastic. So the questions are, when is the expiration? So I can get in at 4? No, we're presenting it at noon. Well, if I didn't know that, I would have missed the deadline for my clients, right? It's the additional layer of question. So now I know I have to have it in really by 11 so that Brian has a chance to print it and review it so that my offer gets in. I've also prepped him that I'm going to follow up with him. I'm going to follow up no matter what because I'm building a relationship. So if my clients don't like it, I'm still going to text him and say, hey, Brian, thank you so much for your time today. They've actually decided to pass on it. Good luck with your offers. I just didn't want you to be waiting on me, right? I'm letting him know. Go. Don't wait for me. We're friends. I appreciate the information. Go do what you need to do, right? If they like it, I'm texting him and saying, hey, Brian, my people do have interest. I'm going to go ahead and get you the offer tonight so that you have plenty of time to review it. Do you have time later for a few minutes for a chat? or have you been bombarded today with calls?
Oh my gosh. I'm kind of I'm kind of bombarded, to tell you the truth, Jen. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well then I don't want to bother you anymore. I just want to make sure, is there anything else that I failed to ask that would help your sellers out?
I will tell you, who buys the house is really important. We've already gotten a letter from one of the buyers, and that was very impactful for the sellers. So, I think that they would entertain that information if that's something you'd be willing to share.
Fantastic. So now I know, right? I know that Brian doesn't want to talk to me. He's tired. If I call him, he feels obligated to talk to me because, our relationship, our past history. I've helped him with things. He's helped me with things. His phone, if my phone rings, his name's on it, I'm answering it. I feel obligated because we're friends. But there are days I don't want to, but I need to, right? There are days I'm tired or I've had a couple of cocktails. I'm like, right now? Like, I need to do this right now? But what I'm doing is I'm giving Brian permission to say to me, I don't want to talk about it. I really prefer text message. I've asked it twice. Would you prefer a call or a text? And he said text. And I said, do you have time to chat later? He says, no, I'm tired. I've asked twice. Do I win with him or do I lose with him if I don't listen and I call him? I lose. Am I easy to work with or am I hard to work with if I'm not following the instruction? Hard to work with. Also, if he's told me reverse contingency, I've said cash, I've said my people don't care, and then I write up an offer with a 30-day closing, no reverse contingency, no extra time, nothing else built in. He's like, why did I take 15 minutes to talk to her yesterday? She didn't even listen. So my clients might not feel comfortable with a reverse contingency, and I will explain what that is for those of you that don't know it. But if I've said, okay, this is what we're willing to do, and then my clients are like, I don't know about that, but I would let them lease it. I'd like to close because my interest rates, or they were cash. I'd like to close because I've got 1031 exchange money, and my time frame is right now. I don't really want to do a reverse contingency, but I would let them stay in it for another 2 weeks after closing or a month after closing, or we can negotiate the time frame that they get to stay in the house after they find their house. I can contract around anything. I can make it work for Brian's people. It might not be Brian's idea of a reverse contingency, but the end goal is still met. Part of the thing that said creativity, we're coming up with different ideas for the same solution. It can work for Brian's people and it can work for my people. So reverse contingency is basically, normal contingency is this. If it is a contingent offer, it is, I'm saying, Brian, I'm gonna buy your house. I'm the buyer, he's the seller. I'm gonna buy your house, but it is contingent on my personal property closing. Once my personal property is under contract, we are now officially under contract and my inspection and due diligence starts. Reverse contingency is, I'm the buyer, Brian's the seller. I offer Brian whatever. He says, I'm fine with those terms, but I get 2 weeks to find a house. And if I don't find a house in 2 weeks, we can either extend it or we're out. So my due diligence as the buyer doesn't start until he lifts the contingency of the purchase. Does that make sense? Any questions about that?
Cool.
Run, Brian, run.
I have a situation coming up where I have some buyers, husband and wife and their kids in a rental house. Her in-laws have a home that they need to sell, but they're going to be moving in together into like a mother-in-law type suite situation. So what they're going to be looking for with their budget's going to be very specific. So how do I set this up logistically to where they're in the best position? Because they're going to have to sell that house and also find something very specific. Does that make sense?
It does. So here's what I would tell somebody that had a house to sell but doesn't know if they can find something. What comes first, the chicken or the egg? I don't know. However, I know that you can't buy without selling. So in this situation, we've got to put you on the market. I know you can't buy in this market with a contingency. It's too competitive. When the house that fits comes on the market, if you haven't listed your house yet and it's not on the market, we have no negotiating power, none. If someone's willing to take a contingency, which is really unlikely in this market, we're gonna overpay for the house. You have to give something on a contingency. We overpay for it to get the contingency, right? We're never going to be able to secure the property of your dreams if you're not on the market. But good news for you, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we're in a seller's market, and a seller's market doesn't just mean price. A seller's market also means that we get to lay out some other terms. Closing date, post-possession, a reverse contingency. We have all kinds of other options. Just because we get an offer doesn't mean you have to accept it. So we've got loads of ways to make sure that you're not homeless and that we have the time to find your perfect house. But I know that I can't find your perfect house if you're not in a position to buy it. It would be very disheartening for us to find that needle in a haystack, and then because this one isn't on the market, we're not ready to go. So what I would suggest is that we go ahead and get the listing paperwork signed. We go ahead and get the pictures taken. Let me do a pre-market search, see if there's possibly anything that we could get you guys excited about. But I can promise you I'm going to be looking the whole time. I'm going to be looking for you. I'm not just looking at what's active on the market. I'm going to see what else we can find and I can drum up for you. But you're never going to accept an offer that you don't feel comfortable with, and that doesn't just mean price. That's what I would say. You're welcome. Anything else? Any other questions? Here, I'm right here, Brian.
Oh, no, I need the steps. You're good.
So do I.
So I've,
Comparatively, you really don't.
I've got 2 deals closing on the 26th of February. That's contingent on the,
Congratulations.
thanks, contingent on the sale of the listing for the purchase of the new house. So my clients are the sellers and the buyers. It's contingent on the sale of
Their first house?
the listing, yeah, to be able to purchase. And I'm trying to set it up so it all happens on the same day, so it's same place. My question is so we've got both of the contracts in place. Like they're both kind of simultaneously happening right now. Like the listing, they're fixing what was on the inspection notice. The inspection on the buy side is happening today, actually. And that you had said that on a contingency, the inspections don't happen until or like all that stuff doesn't happen until the close of the listing.
The contingency, you're talking about it's contingent upon the closing. I was talking about the sale and closing. So if it wasn't under contract yet, even though you've got the buy side, you know, your buyers have a contingency contract, but your listing hasn't been put under contract yet. Correct. Sometimes people will try to make a contingency offer before their house is even under contract. That's what I was talking. I'm sorry. I'm glad
There's-
you asked that because I was not.
She
very
was
clear.
talking about the rider contingency for sale. In your situation, it's contingency for closing.
That's right. That's right. Say that. Yep. So contingency for sale of a house is we are putting it contingent on the house that is for sale going under contract. Once it goes under contract, there's still a contingency for closing. So if something happens in your example where you get to 2 days before closing and the buyer on the first house maybe loses their job and they do a verification of employment and that doesn't go well, that falls apart, but he's built in the contingency for closing. So property number 1 didn't close, so property 2 is automatically off the table. Is that better? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, it's listed differently on the MLS too. So
Yep.
if you have a contract if you've accepted something with a contingency of sale, it's active with contingency on the MLS. If it is contingent upon the closing, it's just pending. It's just straight out
Just
under
shows
contract.
pending. Yep,
Yeah.
nobody else is showing it. But if you see under contract with contingency, people are still showing it and actively showing it. There's typically a kick-out clause and other things. Any other questions about that?
On a reverse contingency?
If it's, we'll accept the offer, but we want 2 weeks to stay in the house past closing? Is that when it starts? Like the 2 weeks? Is that closing?
2 weeks is until they put it under contract. So on a reverse contingency, what we're saying is, you brought me an offer, I'm accepting the terms, but for the next 2 weeks, if I don't find a house in the next 2 weeks, our contract is null and void. You've not started doing inspections as the buyer's agent, you've not started an appraisal process, you've done nothing. Our contract doesn't start till I say I found my house and I've got it successfully under contract.
and you've got 2 weeks to do that.
You can put anything in you want. I
Anything,
said 2
but-
weeks. You could
yeah.
put 30 days, you could put 3 months, you could put anything in there.
What she was referencing as far as possession afterwards would actually be a different form, which is possession of seller after closing.
Yep. So the possession part, if you were like, I don't want to do a reverse contingency, I don't want to give them 2 weeks to find their house. I don't care if they never find a house, but I will let them stay in for 14 extra days. Mhm. That's right.
Post closing.
There's a rider for it
Yep.
that's post-possession after closing for the
Yeah.
seller to stay. Sometimes there's rental amounts involved, sometimes not, depends on how you write it up in your offer. But it's very clear on who has insurance, who's held liable for things. You want to have that form with it.
Correct.
Anything else? Any other questions? That's right. So basically what Blake's saying is once closing happens, it's finalized. So if the sellers stay in the house for 2 weeks and then they move out and the buyers move in and they never had it inspected, they never did a walkthrough, they never did anything, they can't all of a sudden say, hey, the roof is leaking. Now, if they had inspections and they did all these things and they said, hey, the roof is leaking, and the seller said, hey, we'll get it fixed, and you close and the buyer moves in and it's not fixed, that's different. The seller is obligated to what they agreed to during the inspection request. Mhm. The form covers what's normal wear and tear. So
Regarding the
basic-
final walkthrough.
Well, yeah, during the final walkthrough, if there's something that you're like, we're doing the walkthrough, but these people are still living here for 2 weeks, the assumption is it's in the same condition 2 weeks from now as it is today. And if it's not, then that would be the seller's responsibility to make that whole, to make that correct. Yeah, they break a window, they put a hole in the drywall, that would be lined out in, outside of normal wear and tear, the seller has the responsibility of those. Most of the time, people are pretty aware. That very rarely goes that direction. If you're doing it, go in with the best of intentions and go ahead, Blake. Not yours.
Their recourse, not your recourse. Yeah.
The agent is done.
Yeah.
So it's a good point, though. We get calls all the time where people are like, hey, I moved in here and the inspector didn't catch XYZ. Oh, gosh. I am so sorry to hear that. Here's the inspector's number. Why don't you call them and maybe see what happened that day? It's not my problem. I mean, I love them and I don't want it to be terrible for them. But at the same point, if it's closed and they've moved in, the inspector also got paid. I mean, they have an agreement direct with your buyer. There are loads of things that agents put themselves in the middle of that
They don't
that
need to
add
be
a
in the
lot
middle
of headache and stress to an already stressful job. Make sure that you've got that layer in there. I'm so sorry that happened. Because you are. I'm so sorry. Here's the inspector's name and number. Let me know how it turns out. I still care about it. I still want it to get fixed for them. But it's not my conversation with the inspection company. It's the buyer's conversation. Because typically, if the buyer calls them, the inspector is more willing to do something than if you do. Okay, putting it all together. Action plan, prepare for your next class, recall and remember. Any ahas from today? Really?
You
I'm
guys
not kicked
can-
out? Am I get to teach another class one day?
Ahas, big takeaways. Anybody online?
Mike said when he was giving advice when we were talking about the listing agent, he was like, ask, ask, ask. The agent with the most information wins, which is accurate. The more you know, the more it helps.
This is a really super simple thing.
Yeah.
Because I can't.
Mhm.
And as you're going through it,
It is, and that's slowing down. It's slowing down to be detail oriented. We are all salespeople. Sometimes the details don't come that easy to some of our personalities. So if you look at it and you're looking at property data date, I mean, there are loads of check boxes to look at. What are the property data days? How many days are the inspections? How many are the, what is the checkbox marked that the buyer has to ask for? Give them the seller's opportunity to fix it. Oh, here we go. I'm in my trouble. You're like, I really got to save her today.
That's right.
When do you normally do your
I typically do it the morning of closing. I have had pipes burst overnight. Yeah, I would say, well, two separate things though. There's a reinspection that you can do that are things that are supposed to be done. So the reinspection would be 3 to 4 days in advance. Let's not add any stress to people the day before closing. But the walkthrough of the buyers actually going back through, not verifying inspection items, I believe that should be as close to closing as possible just to be safe.
So we did the final walkthrough the night before. The closing was 8 o'clock the next morning. And the walkthrough we did at 5, and there was still things in the house and in the yard. And we were assured, and we saw the truck pull up, that they were going to remove all of it. They removed the stuff they wanted, and they left the stuff they didn't, which now we didn't find out until after we closed. I mean, I guess that's on me. I should have, I don't know. I don't know what I would have done differently.
That is not on you as the agent. That would still be on the sellers. It would be the seller's responsibility. It is lined out in the contract of how it's supposed to be left, which is like broom swept or something. So that is not on you. It would not be your cost. What I have done in the past, because Dan and I have moved a lot of people out of a lot of houses, because that's what we do sometimes. And sometimes we've had to pay people to do it. And if that happens and we get into that situation, I do send the invoice to the listing agent. It is either they can pay it or they can give it to their seller, but I'm not taking the cost on for my buyers. I trusted when they said they were going to be out that they were out. So
The one thing I've heard you say over and over, and what I heard through the whole thing, number one, you got to be competent with your stuff, but number two, don't be a jerk. It's a relationship business, and if you build that friendly relationship with other agents, and you keep asking and just getting more information, that's the bottom line of it. If you are easy to deal with, and I've actually had multiple offer things where people have said to me, Mike, yours isn't the best offer, but I'd really rather work with you. Can you make it any better? And you will get
lots of times.
Yeah.
I will say, Adam Grady recently, we were in multiple offers and I called and I was like, what does it take? And he said this. He was like, this, and it was closing date. It was not price. He did not
Yeah.
tell me price. It was closing date. He was like, I was the only person that asked outside of price, what else matters? He was like, and I would rather work with you. I know it will get to closing. I know that those things will happen. And you're like, we're competitive with one another as far as teams go. We're also very respectful of one another. I'd rather do a deal with someone that I know I have their cell phone number. I can call them. I can ask a question.
Right.
But if I ask him those questions and I say, what can I do? I also should listen and follow through on it.
Yeah.
So this is more kind of on the topic of, as an agent, what is your responsibilities to your buyer seller? What should you stay out of? On my listing right now, the inspector came through and they said that the specific item needed to be fixed. My seller hired a handyman. He fixed it and then realized that didn't need to be fixed in the first place.
It was in the inspection report or in the inspection request?
It was in both. It was in the
But
report.
the buyer requested it.
They requested it based off of what was in the inspection report.
And you didn't counter it. You just accepted it.
Well,
You didn't counter that item.
yeah, it was kind of a sticking point. We countered it, but then it was in the original inspection notice, so they came back with it again. Anyway, we came to an agreement. But at that point, as the listing agent, because my seller did incur costs that they don't believe that they should have had to pay for with having the handyman come out and make this repair. Is that a conversation I have with the inspection company? Is that something that I'm just curious because, you know, it wasn't an inspection we ordered, but, you know, my seller is doing these repairs based off the report that they believe wasn't correct.
I think that would have been, if they signed it and they agreed to do the repairs, then it is the seller's cost to do the repairs.
Yeah.
Their choice at that point would have been to do, in that 10-day window that you have to resolve the issue, it would have been that if you're the listing agent, and the seller's responsibility to get additional information to see if it was valid or not. If it's not valid, there have been loads of times where people have called and said, hey, Jen, you guys said that there were termites, let's just say, and we've had 3 companies come out and not a one of them can find a termite. I'm like, really? Can you get me those 3 reports? Like, I mean, that's a facetious example, but it happens.
There was one termite company for a while, and the phrase on them was, well, if they don't find termites, they'll bring them for you. You
Yeah.
know, so not every company, you know, so second opinions. So in that inspection time frame, you could respond back and say, this is not broken. You
And
know,
here's the reasoning behind it.
Yeah.
There are loads of things that there are certain people that think it should be fixed. For example, exhaust fans from a bathroom that go into the attic space. Lots of times you're going to see that people want that to go through the roof line because they're going to say that it should exit the roof, right? And it can cause condensation in the bathroom line or whatever, like around the fan. Okay. There are other people though that say once you take it through the roof line, number one, you have another hole in your roof.
exactly.
Which you are going to have potential leaks around. It also, the condensation can be worse because it's traveling further up. It's still going to condensate and then come back down. So you're going to have things like that you just have to say, is your seller willing to fix it? Or if they're willing to fix it, you say to the buyer, they're willing to fix this. And there's another school of thought. We're willing to fix it. Is that what you want?
USDA for a while, every house had to have a vapor barrier. Then they realized, oh, that causes more problems in some houses. So then they went the opposite way and said, no, don't have vapor barriers. So things change over time and different, you know, philosophies. And a lot of inspection reports are 60 pages of cover your butt stuff saying this may happen. Well, yeah, everything may happen. But yeah, you can just respond back and say, we'll fix this, we won't fix that. But you have that 10 days or even extension to, you know, especially the way it's written now, because it's more like a counter offer back and forth thing. The one thing I have noticed on that, okay, let's say I do an inspection report to Jen saying, I want these things fixed by a qualified professional. And she counters back saying this will be fixed. And she never mentions qualified professional, and I accept it. I'm accepting it being done by a Harry homeowner.
I'm doing it.
That wording
those
has to
myself.
carry on just like a counter offer. That's the one I learned the wrong way.
Can't change light bulbs.
Yeah. One other thing, I love how you ask all those questions. And she said, other than price, here's something I do with price too. Okay, so you've got a house, Jen. You've got a house. I'm getting ready to write you an offer. I know it's listed at 200,000. Do you have any offers over list price?
I have one.
You have one over list price. Okay, great. And what closing date's best for your people?
60 days.
60 days. And is that offer over 205,000?
Oh, that's tricky. He's narrowing in on how far over
Yeah.
it is.
And I've had people almost. Do they have to answer that? Depends on their employment agreement.
Right, and I could say, you know what, Mike, my people want full disclosure. So if I tell you this, just know
Yeah.
that I may have to tell the other agent what your offer comes in at. But yes, the other offer is at 207,500.
Yeah, but if you just keep asking questions and you throw the price in every once in a while, sometimes people will answer it without thinking.
They get tripped up.
Yeah,
Now, just because they've given you permission to disclose it, does not mean you have to disclose it. Is that correct? Because
Correct.
you are working in their fiduciary. That's your
If the seller wants you to disclose it, you have to disclose it. If they say disclose additional price, disclose other offers, and you're specific and you say, do you want them to know the terms of the other offers? Yes, then it would be, this is what it is.
I would say if it's in writing that you're going to disclose the amount, you need to. For a while, there were things called fair market offers, and it was like an auction. And Hilton Realty did a lot. But you would call them, they'd tell you the price, and the highest price at the deadline, like 3 p.m. wins. So I would be in their office on my phone with my person. It was like an auction thing with a blank. I had the addendum signed, and I would just fill out the price at the last minute. So they were telling the price to everybody. And so at 259 and a half, I'm writing in what the best offer is. So
I read that as I can disclose it. But when an agent calls, I'm not just gonna.
just you're working for your seller, so whichever way they want it is kind of how I look at it.
It's an additional question. If you're just going through listing paperwork and not really explaining to them what that means, slow down enough to say, hey, we can take this case by case. If we get multiple offers, I'm going to ask you this again if you want me to disclose terms.
Which is better? Would you rather them say yes, disclose terms, or no disclose terms?
So which is better?
I don't either.
You don't disclose terms and price?
I'm just asking, which is better for you, because I've had it both ways in multiple offer situations. One of them's like, yeah, we don't care, the sellers are fine with it, the others are like, I can't tell you.
If you tell them they know what price, like if it's 200,000 and I know the best price is 207.5, I'm going to write mine for 207,527 because 27 is my magic number. Every time I put that on, I win a bidding war. I don't know why, but if I don't know, then I'm thinking, then I got to tell my buyers, I got to say, okay, we don't know what it is. What price should we go to? And so the way I work it with them is I say, okay, would you hate to lose this house if somebody else got it at $250,000, $205,000 house? They'll say, no. Say, okay, how about 240, 230? What's the price where you would hate to have lost it? Because now I have to guess how high I'm going, and that's kind of how I approach it. So I never disclose because I want the other people thinking they have to go higher. Absolutely, yeah.
I would say the same thing.
Yeah, I dictate that by the house. If it's a really nice move-in ready house, then I typically recommend for my sellers to allow me to discuss the existence of other offers and terms because I can drive the price up. If it's a piece of junk, I'm going to say existence, yes, terms, no, because then I can say we got an offer, and then over in my brain I'm like, it's a really bad one that we're not going to accept. But we did accept. We did receive another offer. Unfortunately, and you can lean on it. You said, unfortunately, based on the terms of my employment agreement, I'm not, the seller has not consented for me to share the terms of that offer, but I can tell you we received one.
People, and if you are not going to disclose terms and people say, what can you tell me about it? It's a strong offer. I mean, that strong is relative. It's a strong offer.
Pretty sure it's gonna close.
Feel really confident in the appraisal value. Any other questions or ahas?
So we got a few online. So Jessica says, I've learned a lot, like how Jen's gone into different scenarios, the wording for certain situations, super helpful. And then AHA specific questions to ask, examples of the different conversations between buyer and agent. Yep.
Right here. I beat you.
So when I first came to KW, the first thing that, one of the first trainings, the aha that I had at that training was that sellers want to sell and buyers want to buy. And if you can keep your emotions out of it, and she touched on this earlier, you will put the deal together most of the time. But the minute that you start saying my buyers or my sellers, or I want to get you a good deal, or I think we could do this, that's when stuff just starts getting in the way. And then the relationship with the other agent, like calling and saying, hey, can I do this? Like if they have one deal with you and you're negotiating on their behalf on what you want the deal to look like people aren't going to want to do a deal with you because it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. So that was a big aha for me when I first started because then you can solve problems.
I will do more deals with Jen than I will with most of my clients.
Yeah.
Right?
Over the course of your career.
Over the course of my career, I will cheat. I need her to like me a lot because the chances of me being in negotiation again is pretty high.
I like tacos. People wanted to bribe me.
Noted.
No cheese.
No
Just throwing it out there. People
Cool.
wanted to bribe me for things. Just kidding. Not kidding. I'm not kidding about bribing. No, I love food.
This kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier. You were kind of role playing a scenario, but it was where there was an offer. They had put 10% down on a conventional loan, but you said they were waiving the appraisal.
Mhm.
How can, that's basically the bank's call, correct?
They're basically saying it wouldn't be waiving it. They would be saying we're going to make up the difference. I'm going to put 10% down. I probably said it wrong. We're going to put 10% down, but I'm not making this sale contingent on the appraisal. If something comes in under value, I have cash reserves to make up the difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's right.
But yeah, there's a difference.
But we were talking about that a little bit where I said, when you Mike, do you want to repeat that? They couldn't
Yeah.
hear you, and then I'll.
Not contingent on financing. You can still finance that. It's just not contingent on it. So,
The cash backup anyway.
yeah.
So we talked about the pre-approval earlier, or somebody giving you a proof of funds letter. That's what I want to look at. I want to know, because I can never force somebody to close and I can't produce cash that's not there. I want to know, is it actually cash, or are they potentially going to finance it? Because even with financing, there can be hiccups. Even if they're saying it's not contingent and
Yep.
contractually, I still want to know, is it like real cash, like they've got it in their bank, or it's a HELOC where there's an appraisal on a second house or something else that's coming down the pipeline?
So next to your listing agent, who's your best friend during that time, the loan officer is your second best friend. Stay in touch with them. Call them. You know, you have the right to do that. You know, even if you're on the listing side, I said that backwards, but you can, but yeah, stay in touch because you've got to know what's going on. And most good loan officers will let you know where they are in the process, usually weekly, and they'll let you know if there's any hiccups coming up and how they've already got a plan to fix it.
It is. It's, when we look at it, the other part of, we talked about love letters and cover letters and making it clean. The other thing as a buyer's agent you can do is, if I have my lender call Blake and say, hey, I know that Jen submitted an offer for Mindy. I just wanted to let you know that Mindy is not just, pre-approved. We actually are all the way through the process with her. She's a client of the banks. We have a good history of her. This is under, honestly, what we would allow her to spend. If that's a lender, and I can ask my lender, they're a preferred vendor for me. They're a business partner of mine, to make that call for me. Well, if he knows my lender and it's like, gosh, that's an extra step. So you look at it, the other part of it that we touched on is, in multiple offers to win, well, what would it look like for you to not have a 10-day due diligence period? Buyer's remorse goes down. There's less time to freak out about it. It moves the process faster. But if you're going to do that, then you reach out to the inspector ahead of time and say, I'm in multiple offers. It's Friday. Do you have a spot for me Monday that I can reserve if I get this done?
And I put that in my summary letter to the agent also. We already have our inspector lined up. We're ready to go.
We're ready to go. And we're not going to waste your time.
To the day. Yeah.
Yep.
Fantastic.
The one thing I would tell you, when you look through the topic we've gone over today, if you guys have not read Shift, it is a great book, but there is a tactic that is around bulletproofing the transaction. And it gives loads of these types of ideas on how you set your offer apart, how you button it up, right? As clean as it can be, to give you the best likelihood of getting to the closing table. It's a really good chapter to read specifically now.
The aha that I will share, and I know that I've shared this in multiple of your trainings,
I say the
is
same thing every time.
you notice that like 90% of the stuff that would bulletproof the transaction happens not when you're in negotiation, right?
No.
It's in the consultation, in that initial conversation, setting the expectation with the buyer on how to win before you're even in competition.
It is, and we're having those conversations in the strategy session. We're having them when we're in showings. We're talking about it consistently throughout. Hey, just as a reminder, we're in this house. I see a broken pane on this window. I see it. Just to keep in mind, like, do we want to address it now, or we want to wait for an inspection? Or are we okay with it, right? So we're talking about, even ahead of the inspections, how we're going to handle the inspections. Hey guys, we're not looking for loose toilets. We're not looking for a missing caulk. We're looking for termites. We're looking for 5 things. We're looking for termites. We're looking for structural. We are looking for plumbing, electrical, and roof. That's what I'm looking. I'm looking for big ticket items. What? Caulking?
Peach. It's the acronym. Electrical,
Oh,
appliances, cooling, heating.
I never knew that.
Peach.
That's my aha for the day. I'm always like, these are the things you look for.
Preach. Roof.
take
Oh,
the-
preach.
I'd take the appliances
Yes.
out.
Preach is for the.
I would take the
like
A out.
it.
I wouldn't look at appliances.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
personal property. Yes.
Pretch.
Thanks. Thanks.
So just because you're both here and there's a lot of experience up here. So in the very beginning, if you not old, just experienced. So let's say you understand the contract.
Botox, I think.
If everyone here understands the contract, right, and you're trying to put the deal together and the seller wants to sell and the buyer wants to buy, but the other agent doesn't know the contract. And they say, for instance, I literally just did this. I submitted an offer. They said, great. And they're like, well, the refrigerator and all these things are going. And it included the stove. And it was like, well, the stove technically stays per the contract. And there was other things that we had to walk through, and they did not like that because they said, well, we mentioned in the listing that we're taking it with us. And if you go to the listing, they don't mention that anywhere to begin with. So when those things start happening, because you guys will learn the contract and you guys will get it, the next obstacle that you have to overcome is how do you have those conversations with the other agent that has made the mistake or has dropped the ball or done whatever.
I think my answer for that would be I'm first and foremost a human and I'm a good person. And are there times I'm gonna be frustrated where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm doing double the work? Yeah, and I signed up for it. At the end of the day, for me, in my life, I don't want the legacy that I leave for somebody to be like, gosh, I couldn't ask her a question. I couldn't make a mistake without her head popping off or whatever else. So I think for me, I'm like, at my core, I'm an instructor, I'm a trainer, I'm a coach, and I'm a human. So for me, am I annoyed sometimes? Yep. For the most part, though, I'm going to answer the questions because at one point I was new and I've made loads of mistakes. And recently we sent over an inspection notice and didn't have the radon report back, right? You get one shot. We didn't have it back. It was high. The other agent is Jeff Fry. He's at another brokerage. And I have been friends with him forever. And I was like, oh my gosh. I wasn't in the office. It got sent out. I'm so sorry. He was like, Jen, don't worry about it. I already talked to the builder. We know it's coming. We'll get it fixed. Don't worry about it. Because I think those things work out for you when you're a good person. Because I'm still going to make mistakes. So if somebody makes a mistake on one of our contracts, I'm probably okay with it.
You've got to do it with the heart of the teacher, like Jen said, but I'm going to give you the greedy side of it too. Okay? You'd show them and you help them learn through it to where they go, huh, there's something different there, to where someday they'll come in under your profit share line. Always be thinking that way.
That's better.
But the heart of the teacher, because I want people to understand, I want to be helpful all the way through. But the more you share love with people, at some point when they are at a crisis and their brokerage isn't teaching them these things, they're going to come to you and say, well, how'd you learn this? Well, I went through a month-long thing called Ignite. You got to come over and visit with Mike or Tim, and then your profit share. So I'm the greedy side.
Inspection notice, I think that's a big one, what you're dealing with. And you're thinking, am I getting it? I'm sure I could do nothing and think, ha ha.
Got you. Not a win-win though.
But I don't do that because that just leaves everybody feel, I call and I'm like, hey, we didn't get an inspection notice. And sometimes they're like, oh yeah, we don't have anything.
Don't worry about it.
And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, awesome. Wish you would have called me and let me know. Much better last night.
You know, there are times where people have missed it with us and we get the list and it's a day late and I will call and I'll say, you know what, Mindy, you and I both know we missed the deadline. Let's work through this. I want you guys to win. I want you to feel like you've got something. And I don't think at this point my clients are going to put on a new roof, right? Like whatever it is, like, but I do feel like those are things where I'm like, okay, I can go to the seller and say, I'm honest. They missed the deadline. We don't have to do anything. But the rest of the transaction is going to go way smoother if we throw them a bone. Would it be something that you'd be willing, out of these 5 items, would you be willing to handle, these 2 or 3 and then?
Yeah.
Right. But I'm like, and sometimes the sellers are like, no. And then I have to come back and I have to say, I'm so sorry. They won't do anything. What can I do to make this better? I'm not saying, got you. We don't do anything.
Do you call ahead of time if you notice they're about to? Do you pick up the phone?
I will, sometimes I'll call the day before or that day and say, hey, today's the deadline. Because what if I have the deadline wrong?
Right.
So.
Right.
Deadline is this, is it coming?
Hey, did I miss something? Because there have been times like we talked about, if Dan gets an offer in and it goes to his junk mail because they sent it right through DocuSign, that could also happen with an inspection notice. So it is very much, hey, I just want to make sure I didn't miss something. I don't have anything. I'm not sure. I had somebody from another brokerage that missed the extension. They told me verbally that they were going to send an extension. They didn't send it. We get back into the office. I call Monday. I'm like, hey, I didn't get this over the weekend. Like, I thought we were going to send it. And he was like, oh my gosh, I didn't send it. And I was like, okay. I said, well, what were the items? And he gave me the list and I called my people and they were like, but he missed his deadline. And I was like, I know. And we were already planning on certain amount of repairs. We budgeted in. I didn't do a seller net sheet. I probably need to do that before we leave. But we talked about it and I was like, but when we talked about this, we said it was probably $1,500 to $2,000 worth of repairs. I get that you don't want to fix anything, but could we give them a credit? I mean, would you be willing to do some of it?
But notice once again, what she's doing is bringing it to the seller because we all have our lanes. And earlier we were talking about, well, the inspector's job is this. If you give a buddy agent the grace of just saying, yeah, I know you missed it, well, we're good. No. Like now you've violated your fiduciary to your client because
I've got to be
ultimately,
honest with the seller.
yeah, you've got to go and you've got to
I can't lead
present.
them to being better people than they are.
Yes. And that's coaching and negotiation, like you said.
I gotta head back up.
Okay.
Make sure you do your calls because you want to get that checklist she was talking about.
Yep.
Because you
Yep.
don't want to buy her fridge.
Yeah.
No.
Checklist are your friend. Do your calls.
Should we run through a seller's net sheet? Does anybody want to see that? Okay. Okay. So we've used $200,000 as the sales price. Let's just use easy math. So if you look at, we've got a sales price of 200,000, and let's say commissions, we take the full 6%. So what's 6% of 200,000?
Oh, that's 12.
Okay, so we got 12,000. So this is the 6% commission. And then we look at, okay, typical taxes. Let's just use a number. Let's say the taxes are $1,200 and it's March. How would you figure that out? 3 months.
Okay.
So what are you? Pass their test, but
Okay, let's talk about it. So we're prorating taxes, okay?
Yep.
So taxes are $1,200. So that's $100 a month, right? That's how it breaks down. 1,200 divided by 12. It's
Taxes
100.
are paid in arrears.
So we're gonna say, it's the end of March is the closing, so you take that times 3. Let's say it's March 31st. I was just making sure I was thinking about my knuckles and where the 30 and 31 days go.
That's how I
You know
do
how to
it.
do that? So you know if they're 30 or 31 days in a month? So $300.
The prorated are based on 30 days anyway.
What?
The prorations are always based on a 30-day month anyway.
Oh, good call. I haven't done these in a while. Easy math, Brian.
he hates this.
Okay, so these are the taxes. So you've got this, and then typically what we'll say is 1% you might budget for repairs, 1% of the sales price. How much is that? $2,000?
Yeah, it was 2,000.
Okay. And then the seller owes on the house $137,000. So this is repairs. This is the balance. What's that math? So you take 200,000 minus 12,000 minus 300 minus 2,000. 48,700. We did not talk about title fees. So typically what I would say, it's somewhere between $700 and $1,000. So I would say, you know what, let's take off another $1,000 just to round up, make sure. We're at 47,700, and that's an estimate. But we know this at the listing appointment. If we're listing it here, I can say if you get a full price offer, are you comfortable with this? It's interesting because sometimes this number, this 137, is 187. Yep. We still have to take off the $1,000 in title fees. Now what's that balance? What's the balance? Come on, it's class participation. Mindy, you're my math person.
Yeah. You guys have calculators too? I got the old number.
A lot of mumbles, not a lot of clear answers. So those of you who are online, I can't hear them either. What? So, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I know you need to sell, and I know that you're moving to Florida. Are you comfortable bringing a check for $2,300? If you don't know this information, they're going to be really mad at you later. Because you may get them a full price offer, and they never could sell it at that price. They 100% don't know it. They don't know their payoff. That's really called a payoff. I call it the balance.
I'll recap.
Listing appointment. So the question is, at what point would I have this conversation? It would be at the listing appointment. And I might do a range. So if I'm at a listing appointment, I may say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we are in a really strong market. And what I know is things sell based on price, condition, and location. Your location, we can't do anything about. Your condition might need a little bit of a minor improvement, but price is our biggest marketing tool. And the range of pricing for your house is anywhere from 200,000 to 215,000. 215 is pushing the market. It's pushing the market with the current condition that it's in. So what I want to look at is at 200,000, it's going to sell and we're going to have a line out the door and it's going to sell immediately. At 210, you know, it may sit on for a few days. At 215, we may at some point have to do a price improvement. I'm not sure. But I am doing this and I'm showing them the different levels. I'm also aware enough to say your condition could be improved with a deep clean, some decluttering, and some paint. And if you paint a 1,300 square foot house, we can recoup some of this. We can increase this from 200 to 210. Your paint is fine. You're not losing money. But you have to know those things. You have to understand what the market is and what the variables are. You also have to have the confidence in your knowledge of the market to say, I get that it's a seller's market, but we can make more money if you'll put a little bit of work in. This is really the prep for you guys for when there's a shift. Right now, you're not going to see very many of these where it's a negative number because we're able to push it. But you guys need to know what to happen when you run into that person, because there are still people that are in hard times. There are 3 million Americans that are in forbearance. The normal amount is 1 million, so we're 3 times above the normal rate of people that are behind in payments. At some point, this becomes an issue. Be prepared. I did math on a board. I mess it up. Feeling pretty good about myself. Anything else? Any other questions? We good?
This is super great.
Really? Thanks.
And I've seen you.
I love you. How many times have you taken Ignite? Second time.
Second time.
Learn something new every time.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking.
Christine.
I was like, I've learned probably. Oh, that's how I should have done it.
Mm-hmm.
But you've already ran into the hurdles.
If I could give one piece of advice, it is that go out into the field. Go do something. There's a thing that we like to joke about that's paralysis by analysis. You're learning so much you can't even launch, right? Go launch. Go do stuff. Make the calls. Get people out looking at houses. I almost said in your car. Don't do that. It's a pandemic. Go show houses. Go take listings. Go on listing appointments. Go preview for sale by owners. Have the conversation. Worst they can say is no. I mean, it just really is.
You don't lose anything.
You don't lose anything. You got time. You won't forever. All of your time will be sucked into this industry. Not really. Once you have leverage. Once you have leverage.
It will, then it won't, then it will, then it
Mhm.
won't, then it
Yeah.
won't.
Okay, well, I think that's it. I don't know how to turn any of this off.
I don't.
I like you a lot.
So we are at 12:06. So that leaves some time for you guys to make your calls because we were supposed to go till 1.
You are welcome for your 53 minutes back
Yeah.
to make your calls.
So awesome. Any last questions for anyone online?
Oh, Danielle.
Oh, that's amazing.
I would need a cocktail for that. Yeah, probably. I have a lot of self-confidence. I have a really terrible singing voice, but she is the only person that I sing to on her birthday every year. I know. Hers is bad too. Hers is real bad. So much. The karaoke really would normally be 9 to 5, Dolly Parton, if we were going to do it, but you guys have to buy me drinks and tacos for that. You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you guys for participating. Can I turn this mic off?
Yes, you can.
Make your
Thanks.
calls.